myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Tuesday, which brings Ross Gregory, and we're at the slightly later time of 6 o'clock tonight, which I guess will please some people because they tend not to see it live and people like to see the show live. So here we are, 6 o'clock tonight. Ross in a slightly different place, which somebody actually texted today and says, if Ross is on, can you ask him to make sure that his clock is on the right time, because it does me head in when his clock's on the wrong time behind him. Well, he's actually moved venues to keep you happy today. But as always, he had to talk about the last 7 days at Newcastle United. But we'll start, as I will do with most of the guests this weekend, and just look back at the cup final, Ross. You were down there. What did you make of the whole weekend in general, mate?
Yeah, evening everyone. I think the first thing from my side of things is you can look at it from two perspectives. You can look at it from a fan perspective and the experience and the kind of the whole vibe of the weekend. And for a lot of fans, that would have been their first trip to Wembley. It was for a number of fans. Obviously, it's been 23, 24 years since Newcastle got there in either a cup final or a cup semi-final. So for a lot of fans, it would have been a fantastic weekend and a great experience. I'm unfortunate enough to have been there a few times now with Newcastle, watching Newcastle 96, 90, 98, 99 and 2000 for the Charity Shield, for the two cup finals, and then for the semi-final against Chelsea. And I've been on, obviously, as Newcastle, I've been on the end of four defeats, certainly three of them quite comprehensive. One of them, a little bit closer. So it was a different experience for me this time. I was fortunate enough to go down with, my son went down on the Saturday. I went down on the Sunday. He went down on the Saturday and had a great weekend and great night in Trafalgar Square, along with however many other thousands, 30, 40,000 other Newcastle fans. And it looked like a fantastic atmosphere. Slightly jealous that I didn't go down on the Saturday and get to experience that. But really, really touched and emotional that I was able to spend the Sunday and get to Wembley and watch the game with my son. Something that we talked about for years and years, is something that we hope to do. I took him in 2012, Steve, when Dunstan won the Vase. I took him down there, and he was only a little fella then, and we always talked about going back and watching Newcastle there. We'll get back one day, son, and we'll get back and watch it, and that was fantastic, absolutely fantastic for me as a dad, for me as a person, me and my son, to spend that time together, to have that emotional and that bond and that experience. Absolutely incredible, and something that'll live with me for a long time. And I think that was the case for a lot of fans who've not experienced that before. Going down there, getting there, it was all about the weekend, all about the experience, all about the build up and everything else like that. The other side of it then is the football side of it, Steve. It's what happens in that 90 minutes from 4:30 onwards, and that was where obviously the frustration and the disappointment lies. And for me, having experienced it before and having tasted heartache, having tasted the defeats, having had the disappointments, I just want to win. I just want to win silverware. I just want to see Newcastle United in my lifetime win something. Win. Come away from Wembley having lifted the trophy, so you can have them celebrations on the Sunday night or the Saturday night, whenever the game is. I don't want to be known as the plucky losers, as being known as the team with the best fans. The atmosphere was great. Sang and chanted all the way through 95th minute and still waving flags and supporting the team. That's great. That's what we expect from Newcastle fans, and it is part of it. But I want to be known as a Newcastle fan for something else. And I'm speaking now really quite from the heart as a Newcastle fan, not as a journalist, not as a somebody who's worked and covered them in the media. I'm speaking as a fan. I just want to see Newcastle win something, and I don't just want to be known as, Newcastle have got the best fans. I want Newcastle to be known as Newcastle have got the best team. And unfortunately, for that spell, that 90 minutes, I think we'll all hold our hands up and say Newcastle, weren't able to lay a glove on Man United. Unfortunately, they were the better team. They were stronger in all departments. They had more experience, more nous, more just more understanding of what was needed, and it just showed how the gap that still exists between Newcastle and them, and winning silverware, not necessarily between them and the top six, because we know that Newcastle can do that on a game by game basis, on an individual basis. They can go toe to toe with Man City, with Man United, with Liverpool. They've shown that all season, but taking that next big step to winning silverware is going to be the real challenge for this ownership, for Eddie Howe, for the players, and we all think that they will get there. And we all hope that they will get there. And I know what people will say, that it's very early in the tenure, and that they've got to be given time to develop, and Rome wasn't built in a day, and all this sort of thing. But it comes back to me as this was an opportunity. It was an opportunity. Sometimes you've got to seize these opportunities when they come around, because you don't know when it's going to come around next. We all hope that Newcastle will be back in finals and hunting for silverware and competing over the next 10 years. And I'm sure they will. I really am sure they will. But equally, I was sure in the 90s, Steve, as well, when I thought it was going to last a bit longer. And sometimes you've just got to seize those moments where they come. So look, fantastic weekend. Really enjoyed it. From a personal perspective, like I've touched on, going down with family, friends, all that sort of stuff. Really, really enjoyed it. But from a football perspective, just came away with that ever nagging feeling of disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, I said at this, said last week, we've got to learn from our mistakes, and we've got to pick the right team. Did Eddie Howe pick the right team, do you think? Did he make any mistakes from your perspective? And I know you can say, well, who am I to tell Eddie Howe he's made a mistake? But, the main topics were always going to be ASM. Would he start? Who was he going to start up front? We talked about it last week. So, we look back at 98 and 99 finals and say, oh, God, Dalglish dropped a rick by picking him. Hullet made a rick by picking him. Was there anybody who you would have, maybe, would you made any different calls on the day? That's what I'm trying to say.
I would have picked Alexander Isak. I would have started with Isak up front. I don't think Callum Wilson's been in anywhere near the form that he's shown previously.
One goal in 12 going into a cup final.
Yeah, and it's not just the goal, Steve. He just hasn't looked himself, I don't think, as well. Not necessarily just in front of goal. He just hasn't looked himself. I thought he was very ineffective on Sunday, and that's no dig at Callum Wilson, because I don't think Newcastle gave him the service or the opportunities or anything else like that he showed. And I'm trying not to just speak in hindsight here as well, because I would have played Alexander Isak from the start. If Joe Willock had been fit, I would have played Joe Willock from the start. But I think you could tell when Joe Willock came on in the second half, he was nowhere near comfortable or looked like he could actually explode, or put the miles in or get around the pitch like he used to. So I've got no problem really with ASM starting, because I don't think there was really that much of an option. I would have started Isak up front, but ultimately, Steve, I don't really think it would have made too much of a difference, if I'm being honest. I don't think any of the selection calls that Eddie Howe made were kind of game changing, if you like. I don't think if Isak had started, if Joe Willock had started, if anybody else had started, I don't really think it would have made too much of a difference, to be honest.
No, and Karius, I mean, we were all, looking at that thinking it's a disaster, Pope's not playing, but I genuinely had Karius as one of my men of the match. I thought he had a really good game. And I said on last night's show, I think the best way to reward him would be to give him the number 2 shirt, the number 2 goalkeeper as back up to the Nick Pope for the rest of the season.
Yeah, quite possibly. It was an interesting one, Steve, because I got in early. I got into the ground early, and I watched the warm up, and I watched the warm up in in as much detail as what I could and as closely as what I could. And he looked really nervous in the warm-up to me. Like, he put me on edge, Carrius. I just thought there was a couple of things he spilled, couple of times. And I ended up I texted Liam Kennedy, and said, "Are you watching this warm-up as me?" And I just thought he just didn't look right in the warm-up. Having said that, he came out and he made 2 or 3 really, really good saves, and looked assured, looked relatively confident. I don't think there was anything really he could have done with either goal. Having said that, I think Nick Pope might have saved one of them just because he would have, but that's just because he would have been sharper, because he was more confident, because he was in form. He'd been playing. Carrius hadn't played for 2 years a competitive game, and bearing that in mind, he did nothing wrong. Like I say, a couple of really good saves. Whether you make him number 2, I don't know. It'll all depend on Dubravka. I think Dubravka's a better goalkeeper than Carrius, but Dubravka will want to be a number 1, and I can see him being away in the summer. And if you're looking for an experienced number 2, somebody who is probably comfortable sitting on the bench, but also can step in when needed, then Carrius might be a really good option. To be fair to you, Steve, yeah, I think he might be a really good option for that. But he certainly didn't do anything wrong. He was certainly, yeah, I agree, he was probably one of the better performers. And again, I don't necessarily think having Nick Pope in goal on Sunday would have made too much difference. Maybe it would. Maybe it would have given a bit more assurance and a bit more confidence to the rest of the back four. But I don't think Carrius. I don't think that, again, it was something that changed the nature of the game.
No, definitely not. Who was your man of the match for Newcastle then?
Oh, that's a good question, that one. That is a really good question. Do you know what? I thought Kieran Trippier played well. I thought he did. Bear in mind he was up against Marcus Rashford, and I know Rashford got obviously the second goal, but I thought Trippier did well. I was frustrated, as probably other people were, with again having 10,000 corners in the second half and not scoring. That frustrated us and not really looking like scoring. But I thought Trippier played really well. I also thought that Alexander Isak looked really sharp when he came on at half time and got himself into a couple of really good positions and try to influence the game without actually being able to impact it in that kind of final third, in that key area. I would have maybe like to have seen him at the pointy end of the pitch, if you like, right in that final third. I don't think anybody really stood out to us, though. I don't think anybody stood out or particularly let us down. Bruno looked good until he got injured. I didn't think Joe Linton had a particularly strong game. I didn't think he was able to impact the game that he would like. Miggy Almiron, same. ASM looked in that first 20-25 minutes like he could be the match winner, but then, like everybody else, once Man United got 2 goals up, or 1 goal up, 2 goals up, it just went a bit flat, and they were able to sit back and contain. So for me, I don't think anybody really stood out in terms of a man of the match. It's a really good one. Who would you have said, Steve, in terms of your man of the match?
Yeah, I had 3, mate. I genuinely thought Carrius played well. I thought Joe Linton had a decent game, and I did think Bruno as well. Other than that, I was struggling, but I just thought I thought Joe Linton did what you expect Joe Linton to do, and I thought he took the game. I thought he took the game to the midfield, but he was, they were very clever. Manchester United, they just cut off the supply line. They smothered Bruno, and that we didn't have a plan B. Once Bruno was man marked out of the game, we didn't have a plan B. I thought Miggy was out. Miggy's, he seems to have been sussed out. Maybe he's a bit tired. I thought Dan Burn struggled a lot, but that's because he's doing the job of 2 men on that left hand side. ESM again for me, just he did flatter to deceive. I mean, he had one of those shots on target again, but I just people know what my opinion is on ESM. He'll have 1 good game in 20, and he didn't have that good game at the weekend. He had a good game against Liverpool. I can see why Howe picked him. I've just watched the pre-match interview with Howe actually, and he doesn't mention ESM. He does mention the fact that the decision he had to make was Wilson or Isaac, and he just felt that he made the right decision. So, look, all in all, I think as well, as a manager, you have to have one eye on the remaining part of the season. Had he left ESM out, he would have, he probably would have had more problems in the dressing room for the last 14, 15 games, and may well have found it difficult, getting him motivated. As it happens now, Joelinton's suspended for Man City. Bruno, as we know, took a knock on his ankle again. We're not sure how bad that is. He could be out. And he's going to need ESM. He's going to need Gordon. He's going to need, probably Isaac as well at the weekend. So, it's the right thing to do at the end of the day. I think he made the right decisions. I don't think he got it wrong. But yeah, I think that covers it for me for man of the match. I mean, I think the thing that I took away from the weekend was that it was an enjoyable weekend. I went with my dad and my brother, so it was a good family day out for us. And sadly we didn't see Newcastle win that elusive trophy. That day I think will come, but I think I didn't walk out of Wembley disappointed. I felt Newcastle turned up on the day. They were just beaten by the better team on the day. It was the same old problem that we've had for the last 6 or 7 games. We can't score goals. And I think there was I think the highlight of that again before the game, it was big chances missed in the last 11 games, 27. The previous 11 games was 18. And our shot conversion rate in the last 11 games is 5% as opposed to 16% in the 11 games previous to that. And even shots taken in the last 11 games, we've increased. We've had 171 as opposed to 152. But it's just not good. We've only scored 9 goals in the last 11 games. We scored 25 in the previous 11. So those stats tell you what our problem is, and unfortunately it meant that we didn't stand much of a chance winning the cup unless we could turn that around. So we've got to remember that where we are and where we were, and this time last season, Ross, we were 3rd bottom in the Premier League.
You're absolutely right, Steve. You're absolutely right. If this point last year people had said, right, you're going to be 5th in the Premier League, you're going to be in a cup final at the end of February, you would have absolutely snapped the hands off. And even if you'd said at the start of this season, right, you'll finish in the top 6, top 8, and you'll get to a cup final, I guarantee that every Newcastle fan would have taken that. There wouldn't have been one Newcastle fan who would have went, no, I'm not happy with that. Absolutely would have taken it, 100%. But I can't get away. I understand what you're saying about you came out not feeling disappointed and thinking this could be the start. I'm probably looking at it as a glass half empty, but I just can't get away from the fact that it's another opportunity that slipped through our grasp. Whether it was an opportunity that we had a real chance of kind of taking, if you like. At the end of the day, Man United are in a really strong run of form, and you looked at their team and they had, look, De Gea's a really good goalkeeper with a lot of experience, won trophies. You had Martinez has just won a World Cup. You had Varane who's won a World Cup, Champions Leagues. Casemiro who's won however many trophies. I read a stat, I think, on Casemiro. He's won 9 out of his last 9 finals, something like that, which is just incredible. And you've got these players who are proven winners, who are world-class operators, who've played in the biggest games going and know how to get over the line. And I thought Manchester United did that very well. They didn't play particularly great football. They just knew how to win. They knew when to shut up shop. They knew how to spoil the game. They got the goals, and they looked a really solid side, and we couldn't lay a finger on them, really. But for me, like I say, it's just that opportunity. And will that come around again next year? It might do. It might not. Will it come around in 2 or 3 years' time? I just think you've got to grab them opportunities when you can, because you don't know when that opportunity may come back around. And that was the overall feeling for me on Sunday and Monday, and still today, as you can probably tell tonight, is just that feeling of we've let another opportunity slip through our grasp. Part of it is down ultimately it's timing as well. Newcastle aren't in a particularly good run of form at the minute. We know that since the momentum's kind of died away a little bit probably since the Southampton game. People say since the World Cup break, but I think they came back all right. Good result against Leicester and good result at Arsenal. I think since that Southampton game, it's died away. The goals drying up is a real concern, but as much of a concern for me is it's the other end as well. It's the other 18-yard box. So I think I tweeted at half time. I think in the final on Sunday, I think Newcastle used to be ruthless in the 18-yard box. Now they're toothless. Used to be very, very mean, and now there's the green, the naive. There's a lot of naivety about that defending. How many goals now have we seen from set pieces, from corners, from free kicks conceded against? So it was when Newcastle weren't necessarily free flowing, but you could win a game 1-0 or you could draw a game 0-0 each. Now they're conceding sloppy goals, a little bit, sloppy goals from set pieces. That's just basic marking. So they need to get that ruthlessness back in both 18-yard box. The play in between is fantastic. Some of the build-up play is great. Some of the movement and the passing and the possession is very, very good. But games are won and lost in both 18-yard boxes, and that's what's letting Newcastle down at the minute.
Yeah, Neil says, I think we were the better side over the 90. We just lack strength and depth. We're moving forward in the right direction. And I've got to agree with Neil because, we are moving forward in the right direction. But unfortunately, we are restricted by financial fair play. I think we all know that we need at least a goal scorer up front. We definitely need a creative midfielder, probably a defensive midfielder as well. And maybe another winger. But, for me, we need big players in. We need to clear players out, and that's not just going to happen in the summer. It's going to be successive transfer windows, isn't it?
It is. It's going to take time. It will take time. The club has suffered of kind of 13, 14, 15 years of lack of investment, and that's not going to be able to just be fixed overnight because of financial fair play, because of everything else that comes into it. And I'm not just talking about the transfers on the pitch, it's the commercial activity. The commercial side of Newcastle is lacking, or has been lacking, has been left to rot over the last 14, 15 years, and that obviously restricts the spending. It's nothing that we don't know about. We've talked about this regularly, but it's going to impact and it's going to hinder their ability to close that gap substantially on Chelsea, on Liverpool, on Man United, on Man City, on Arsenal, because Liverpool's financial results came out today, and they've turned a profit, but their commercial revenues are massive compared to what Newcastle's are. And their kit deal, I think they get 30 million basic each year from Nike, I think it is. And then they get a percentage, 20% of sales or whatever it is, something on top of that. These are commercial deals that Newcastle need to be able to replicate, to then be able to give them the budget to be able to spend on big players to bring in. I think, ultimately it's going to take time, and the club is way ahead of where we all thought it would be, and probably where the owners thought it would be at this point in time. And it's going to be a long process. I think Sunday probably showed just how big a job it is in terms of closing that gap consistently on the big teams and bringing in. You looked at the two benches, for example, and there was a massive difference between the two benches. No disrespect to any of the players on Newcastle's bench, but there was a number of championship players who fared well in the championship, who've been good players, for good servants for Newcastle. But you compared their bench with the Man United bench, and it was worlds apart. But that's going to take years and years to close that gap, because you can't just go out and spend 500 million in the next two transfer windows and bring in 10 world-class players. It's got to be done in a kind of sustainable, measured way, abiding by financial fair play, and it will take a bit of time. But the club is on the right tracks. There's no doubt at all about that. The progress that's been made over the last 12 to 18 months is incredible. If they can keep that pace of progress going, then hopefully it won't be that long before they're challenging for silverware on a consistent basis.
What did you make of Amanda Staveley's comments after the game that we will win the Carabao Cup, we will win the FA Cup, we will win the Premier League, and we will win the Champions League? I mean, she does wear her heart on her sleeve, doesn't she?
She does, and there's nothing wrong with that as well. You know, I think she'll get some criticism for some of the comments, as people do. You know, people are entitled to their opinion and entitled to say what they feel and about comments like that. I think Newcastle fans for too long have been starved of communication, starved of hope, starved of ambition from the ownership, from the people at the top end over the last 15 years. You know, there's been none of that talk. So to hear somebody come out and be positive, be upbeat, be ambitious, I don't think you can fault that. You know, we hope that she can help Newcastle deliver those trophies. But that's what you want as a club. You want to have ambition, you want to have standards, you want to have goals that might seem, you know, unachievable right now, but it's part of a process. Why not aim for these things? Why not aim to win the lot? Because if you don't aim for that, well, what's the point in being in football for me?
Yeah, listen, there's nothing wrong with ambition, and I think everybody took those words with a bit of a pinch of salt. It's nice to hear, and from our perspective, you know, we want that kind of commitment, and it's a damn sight better than not hearing from your owner at all and them treating you with the contempt that we had from the previous owner. So, yeah, for me, Amanda, keep on waxing lyrical about what we're going to do, and eventually we may well do it once we're allowed to break those financial fair play regulations and bring in the players that we need. Okay, halfway through the show, I'm going to run the ads. I will update these ads tomorrow when we've got the start of the new sponsorship. Got one or two new sponsors coming in. Anybody who wants to sponsor the show, give us a shout. There are one or two gaps this month, so give us a shout if you're interested.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, starting with Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from mrvickies.co.uk. Email them at info@mrvickies.co.uk or call them on 01768 210 102. Why not try some new beers at Blowhole Brewery? You can find them at blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks also to United Group Travel, UK Coach Holidays based in Morpeth. Telephone 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Thanks also to 3 Properties. They specialise in sourcing investment properties for their clients who are looking to invest in the North East. They offer a full in-house service from sourcing the deals to managing the properties for you. They've done over 100 plus deals in the last 12 months for clients all over the UK. Give the guys a follow on Instagram, matty.patter_northeast property and phil.reed_northeast property, or email phil@3property.co.uk if you're interested in getting a good property deal. Thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to Media Arts for all the videos. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button underneath this video today. Hit the thumb up to like the video and click share to your social media. If you're out and about, you can catch us as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. If you want to join the channel, click join and you'll find out our membership packages down there. Very easy to do. Or if you want to become a cult member, £25 a month, go to nufcmatters.com and look for membership pack, or put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight there. Anyone who subscribes to the channel will get a free car sticker. To get your car sticker, simply email john@nufcmatters.com. Got a few events coming up over the next few weeks. Steve Howie, Friday the 24th of February at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets available for £29 on voucher. An evening with Nobby Solano, Saturday the 25th of March. Tickets £15. Book at nufcmatters.com. Nobby Solano is also at Felling Cricket Club on Good Friday the 7th of April at 4 o'clock. Tickets are £10 and available behind the bar. And an evening with Frank Clark and John Gibson, Thursday the 20th of April. That's at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are £15. Book now at nufcmatters.com. We've also got a vast array of t-shirts available at the website. If you want your special Wembley t-shirt, you can go to nufcmatters.com and get one now while stocks last.
So looking ahead to Man City, Ross, I mean, would you make any changes? Would you start looking now towards this second half of the season? You know, the run-in and, you know, Gordon, of course, will be itching to play, you know, his part. Isak certainly will spend 60 million on him. I don't think we're going to leave him sitting on the bench. Elliot Anderson hasn't gone out on loan. Was trusted with a debut against Liverpool. So, you know, there's three players that you would imagine might get a bit more game time. What's your thoughts on that moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, that, Steve, because there's still a lot to play for at this point of the season. There's still European qualification to secure, hopefully, whether that's via the Champions League in a top 4 place, whether it's through the Europa League or the Europa Conference. There's still a lot to play for. So it's not a case of just kind of writing off this season and experimenting and you know, trying different players out. Not wholly. I mean, part of it does have to be that, but it's got to be done with still the main aim of winning games and finishing in, you know, as high up the table as possible. I think Anthony Gordon has to start games now. He's been brought in for 45 million, and we haven't seen him start a game. He's got to start on Saturday for me. Isak has got to be starting games, because where does he fit into Newcastle? Is he a number 9? Is he a number 10? Is he a wide forward? I don't know if we've fully understood where his best position is yet. So we do need to or Eddie Howe does need to obviously try to figure out how best to get Alexander Isak into the team and how best to utilise his abilities. So I think those two certainly should be looking to start on Saturday. Not just because they've cost a lot of money, but because the team needs freshening up. The forward line needs a bit of freshening up. So I think those two will probably come in. The other one that I think probably needs a little bit of consideration is Matt Targett. If he's back and he's approaching fitness. Now look, Dan Burns done an unbelievable job at left back and has been part of a back four which has been as good a back four or as we've seen at Newcastle in a lot of years. But I think again he might just need a little bit of, you know, taking out the firing line, giving a bit of a rest, and let's get Matt Targett back in if he's fit and fully fit. And what you'll get with Matt Targett, whereas he might not be as strong defensively as Dan Burn, but you might get a little bit more in an attacking sense in terms of overlapping and providing a little bit more width and balls into the box and that sort of thing as well. So those three for me are the kind of the key ones. But there'll be other players, you know, like you say, Elliot Anderson's is knocking on the door for a sniff. If Bruno's injury is bad enough to rule him out on Saturday, then you know somebody else is going to have to come into that midfield area, whether that's Anthony Gordon or whether it's Elliot Anderson. Or I don't think Joe Willock looked fit on Saturday. On Sunday, I don't know what you thought, Steve, when he came on, but he didn't look fit to me. Didn't look like. I agree. So it might be that Elliot Anderson deserves gets a sniff as well. But I think for me, it's trying to figure out what to do with that front three, that Isak, ASM, Gordon, Wilson, Miguel Almiron. There's 5 players there. Finding a three which is going to cut open defenses now and cope with not just being against teams like Man City, where you can probably hit them on the break, you'll expect Man City to have more of the ball. But when you come up against teams like what Man United did with a low block, how can Newcastle penetrate that? How can they create opportunities? And I think putting in Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon is something that needs to happen between now and the end of the season.
This interesting thing, this Brian, I mentioned this to my dad at Wembley. Why not give Willock a try up front with Isak playing off him?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's not one that I've thought of. I think Newcastle need goals from midfield, though, don't they? You know, I think one of the problems has been with the goals drying up is goals from other areas of the pitch, and we're not getting them from set pieces, and not really looking too much like corners or free kicks are going to be a real kind of source of goals. They need to start getting goals from midfield, and one thing we know is that Joe Willock can do that. He can get goals. He's a great finisher. He can get in and amongst the once he gets into that box, making those runs in like he's done in the past. So it's not a bad thought. Certainly playing him as almost as a 10 in off the main striker, and giving him that license to get into the box. I think it's a part of it will be what Eddie Howe is going to have to kind of figure out an answer for, is that midfield three is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily functional, but it's quite rigid in terms of, right, you've got your man in your central area, you've got your right hand side and your left hand side, and they do provide a lot of protection for the fullbacks. But how do we get more out of those in terms of an attacking sense? And does that the makeup of that three-man midfield have to change, and it becomes almost a 2 and a 1, like you're saying, with maybe it's 2 sitting and somebody like Joe Willock playing as a 10 or Elliot Anderson playing as a 10. We saw Anthony Gordon do that when he came on at Bournemouth and play almost as a 10 off the front. Joe Willock has got goals in him. If he can, like I said, I don't think he's fully fit, but if he can get himself fit, then that's not a bad option, not a bad suggestion.
Something a bit different, isn't it? It's something a bit different.
Absolutely.
We've got to find a recipe which is different to the one we've already got. I mean, would you say it's safe to suggest that maybe the 2-week break for the World Cup or the 3-week break for the World Cup, and then other managers and coaches having time to look at why Newcastle was successful, it's given them time to look at us and say, actually, that's how you stop them. And it wasn't very difficult, was it? Stop Bruno playing Newcastle United on the same team, and no surprise to see Almiron form dipped, and we stopped scoring goals. Wilson, of course, coming back, apparently he'd been ill and then coming back from injury. So we need a plan B and a plan C. Really, you always need to be able to change things, and maybe, as I said, this is an opportunity to do it now. And I know we want to qualify. People say we want to qualify for Europe. People will feel it'll be disappointing, but generally speaking, we need to try and find another way of playing as well. I really do feel that.
Yeah, I agree, Steve. I do. I think it's the conundrum. I'm not saying Newcastle have been figured out, but teams have certainly adapted their style and adapted how they play to try and counter some of Newcastle's main threats. Look, Miggy Almiron was never going to continue that vein of form. It just wasn't going to happen. He would have been challenging Salah, Messi, and Mbappe for player of the year. You know, if the Ballon d'Or, if he'd continued that form and bending goals into the top corner every other game, and it just wasn't going to happen. It was a purple patch. Interestingly, it looks like he's got a 3.5-year contract off that purple patch, by the way, which is probably a conversation for another day. Maybe it's not going to that one in this one, but my thoughts on it. But yeah, they certainly need to find another way of breaking teams down, whether that is by improving the set piece deliveries and the set piece movement and threat, whether it's by switching the tactics up a little bit. You know, obviously Isak came on almost as a 10, and they went to a kind of 4-2-3-1 in the second half at Wembley. Didn't really make much difference, probably because the Man United by that time were 2 goals up and could afford just to sit back and defend in numbers and hit on the break. So it didn't really make much difference. But it was pleasing to see them try something a little bit different there. Take a midfielder off and Sean Longstaff and put another forward on. But yeah, you're right. They do need to try and find a different way of breaking teams down because it has become a little bit too predictable, unfortunately.
Any updates on the injuries? David Cook's asking. I think somebody else asked that earlier on. Is Mr. Anderson? Yeah. Have you got any info on Bruno's condition or not, Ross?
No, nothing. A bit early at the minute. He obviously rocked his ankle on Sunday, and it unfortunately he's had ankle issues in the past. So fingers crossed. I would be. Look, he's made a couple of big recoveries. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses Saturday, to be honest, because it's a quick turnaround. It's pretty much 5 days after he rocked his ankle. But no, in a nutshell, I don't have any other inside information than what we all saw on Sunday, unfortunately.
Geordie Tumba Life says, we've not been a possession-based team all of house time at the club. Would we be better going back to counter-attacking team, as we really seem to be struggling to break teams down?
It's a good shout. It's another style of playing, and I think you have to maybe look at different games and think, right, well, actually, let's let the opposition have a little bit more the play. I certainly think on Saturday, Man City will dominate possession. They'll dominate the ball. So Newcastle's best form of attack might be on the counter with the pace of Gordon, with the pace of Almiron, with the pace of Isak, or ASM, or whoever plays, and it probably will become more of a counter-attacking game. I think there's certainly more than one way to skin a cat, and I think Newcastle have to find, as you've alluded to as well, Steve, have to find a different style of play. If it's not working in Plan A, what's Plan B, what's Plan C, and trying different ways of breaking teams down. Yeah,
I mean, that's what it's all about, finding different formations. It's what I was talking about earlier. You need to do that. Graham TC Travel says Isak and Wilson up front together with either ASM or even Gordon drifting between midfield and attack. Have to start putting teams on the back front. Albert suggested Shaw, Botman and Byrne as a 3 with Trippier and Target as wing backs. This allows Wilson and Isak to play together with Gordon or Willock as the floater behind. Another formation suggestion there. Paul Gallant, good evening, says, I think Eddie needs to tell his players some home truths if they want European football. That Lemay needs goals, so time puts his foot down hard with him. We do need goals. I think that's a frustrating thing at times, especially on Sunday. You mentioned earlier, Ross, the build-up play is great, but we don't have enough shots on goal. We don't take it. We don't take a shot on goal, and sometimes it's worth just having that dig from outside the box and testing the keeper.
It is. I don't know who would be doing that. I don't know who's got that ability from distance. Bruno maybe's. I don't know. Cher can obviously strike a ball from distance. You do see that sometimes, and we some of the best midfield players, certainly the best midfield goal scorers that we've seen in the Premier League over the years have been players who can strike a ball from distance and take a shot on from 25, 30 yards. I'm thinking Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, players like that, who can have a crack from outside the box. And you're right, Newcastle don't really have too many efforts from distance. So look, I saw a comment in the chat saying, look, Newcastle are in 5th position, in the 5th position through playing this way, and there shouldn't be any drastic change. And I do agree with that. I do think that, the principles and the style and the patterns of play that have got Newcastle success this season are still the principles and the style of play that should be followed and will be followed for the rest of the season. But that doesn't mean that when those principles and when that way of playing isn't successful, isn't getting the results that you need in a game, you've got to be able to adapt. You've got to be able to find different ways of breaking teams down. And Eddie Howe knows this, and Graham Jones and Jason Tyndall will all be working hard on it on the training ground, day in, day out, week in, week out. And let's hope we can see the fruit of that hard work manifest on Saturday at Man City and throughout the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Wilson came on, and within minutes he had a shot at goal, so what's stopping anybody else, says Stephen Nutkin. John, good evening, says Pope, Trippier, Byrne, Botman, Target, Joe Linton, Bruno, Willock, ASM, Isak and Gordon in a 4-4-3 would be my team versus City. Newcastle need to be at their best when they meet Man City the weekend, Tom. That is definitely an understatement of the week so far. 4-3-3, John says, actually. Yeah, I've got you, mate. A lot of fans from other clubs do say this UK misfit wish you'd beat them horrible red lot. And we need to get back to pressing. That's when we played very well, in my opinion, says Trolls. I think we're just tired ourselves out, Trolls. I think we've been so high intensity for months on end, and it's just finally taken its toll. Tom says apparently our XG was higher than Man U, and the week before it was higher than Liverpool, despite 10 men. That tells you that the opportunities are being created, but the finishing isn't there. And that was a point that was made by the likes of Carragher and Neville pre-match at Wembley. We are creating the chances, but we're just not scoring the goals, and that is the problem. Steve Middlemiss asks an impossible question, I think, Rossies. Where do you think we'll finish in the league on current form? Well, if you see on current form, it's probably going to be outside the top 10. But where do you think Newcastle will finish? Without thinking of the current form, where do you think they're going to finish?
It's a really, really difficult question, because I think so much of it hinges on the next two or three weeks in terms of how the team reacts to this setback. How it's the first real setback that we've seen under Eddie Howe. In the good 12-14 months, since January of last year, when the club then the team went on that run that got them from the relegation zone up into mid-table. And then carried that on into this season. There was always going to be a dip. There was always going to be a bit of a lull, a bit of the momentum lost, and that's when you find out as much about your players as when you find out as much about their characters and the coaching credentials and everything else around that. Is when things aren't going well. How can you change that? How can you lift everybody? How can you turn things around? And I think the next 2 or 3 weeks in terms of fixtures and bouncing back and trying to get some momentum, it will be crucial for the rest of the season. If Newcastle carry on as they are, they could quite comfortably slip out of the top, not just the top 6, into maybe the 8th, that sort of thing. I don't think it'll be any kind of more drastic than that. But there's a lot of teams below Newcastle who are in better form at the minute and who will be chasing. That said, if Newcastle can get the momentum back and find that little bit of spark in front of goal again, there's no reason at all why they won't finish in the top 6 this season. I think top 4 is out of the question now. I do honestly. I don't see that one happening. I'm not trying to be too negative, but I don't think we'll finish top 4. But there's no reason at all why Newcastle can't finish top 6 this season.
Good evening, Mank Man. Good to see you in the chat. He says, hope you finish 4th for all your hard work. He wants to finish 2nd. Why not? Ten Hag's got them playing for him. He's done an amazing job there, you've got to say. Isaac scored quality goals in his time. He doesn't shoot. Hopefully, Howe's not saying don't shoot, let fly. We'll score everyone. And then, says Daniel, hearing that Kieran Tierney is open to a move to Newcastle this summer, would you take him? We've talked about this on the show before, Ross, but there's a lot of people saying he's got injuries, but I looked into it and it doesn't look as bad as everyone was making out. I think that's just a bit of a red herring that's been chucked in. He seems as if he's played a lot of games, but I think that would be a decent shout. But again, a lot can change between now and the summer.
It can. I think he's a cracking player. I think I said on the show last week, if he's fit and firing and playing, he could be one of the best left backs in the Premier League. He's a really fantastic talent. I think he's, if I'm being brutally honest, he's better than any of the left backs Newcastle have currently got on the books. So if you want to improve your team, if you want to push on to the next level, these are the types of players that you need to be bringing in. There'll be more to look at, obviously, in terms of, like you say, his injuries and his character and everything else like that. But I think one of the things that Newcastle have to do to close that gap is they've got to be really smart in their recruitment and still look to bring in a couple of what you call kind of bargains. Players who aren't going to be it cost 25, 30, 40 million. To give themselves extra wiggle room for those big name players. But they've got to be ruthless as well, Steve. They're going to have to start being really ruthless, and it'll be a big summer this summer in terms of recruitment, in terms of ins and outs. You know, there's a lot of players there now who are probably Sunday was a bit of a watershed moment, in a watershed game in terms of that was probably their last chance. And I think to push on, Newcastle have got to be really, really ruthless and go, right, yeah, we might have 3 or 4 left backs, but if this left back comes available and he's better than what we've got, let's just go and get him. Look to improve every department that on the first team front, whether that's wingers, whether that's centre forwards, whether that's left backs, right backs, goalkeepers, and just be really, really ruthless. And if good players come available, Newcastle will certainly be in the scrap for them.
Yeah, this is Eddie's first real test. He needs to find a formula to score goals. It will be interesting to see what happens. Paul says, I don't think it's a huge setback. It's a huge achievement. We got to Wembley. Tom says, Spurs have got a hard run in, but it would be great if we can get back to winning ways. I think we will make the top 5. And Ken Robinson says, unfortunately, and I hate saying it, but I think illness and injuries and the age have finally caught up with Callum Wilson, and he's a squad player now. As says, I told you, Steve, I'm not sure what you told us, but it was probably something to do with the Cup Final and Manchester United beating Newcastle United. But look, we gave it a good shot, and I think we say this a lot, don't we, Ross? If only we had a team as good as the fans. The fans did themselves proud at the weekend as a whole. I think the way that people behaved, at Trafalgar Square and the subsequent tidying up that they did, and then ultimately in the ground, the wonderful display by War Flags, and then the sporadic waving of the flags, with a couple of minutes to go, which was, wasn't planned, wasn't prompted. It was just, people just decided to do it. And I just think it was good. I think it was something like 9 arrests in total, mainly for just drunk and disorderly in and around both Newcastle and at Wembley. So all in all, a very successful trip to London by our fan base.
Oh, look, absolutely. Like I said at the top of the show, Steve, it's something that Newcastle fans have waited for a long, long time, to have that opportunity to go down to Wembley for the weekend, to experience a cup final, to experience the build up, to take over Trafalgar Square like they did, the images, the pictures, the videos, the atmosphere. Like I say, I wasn't fortunate enough to be there on Saturday night, but it looked incredible, and everybody I've spoken to has said it was absolutely outstanding. And not a pick of bother. The cleanup operation was brilliant. And there was, like you say, a few minor skirmishes and whatnot, but on the whole, I think it was a fantastic weekend for Newcastle fans, and one that will live with people for a long time. Let's just hope that it comes around. It's not 24 years till it comes around again. Let's just hope that there's not that long wait, and that next time it's done where Newcastle fans can celebrate on the Sunday night or the Saturday night, celebrate a victory, not just being known as being the best fans, not just being known for having fantastic fan base. Yes, we want Newcastle fans to be recognised for that, and rightly so, because as a group they are phenomenal. But we want to be recognised for winning trophies as well, not just for winning the best fan award.
Got to ask you about the singing. I noticed this was quite an interesting thread that came up on Twitter last night, and a little bit of criticism from fans to fans about the lack of imagination in songs down there, because we didn't sing Bladen Races. We didn't hear people singing United. We didn't hear people singing, This Is Our Club. Like some of the songs that we're used to hearing on away trips. There wasn't a great deal, and I think a lot of people are actually doing their heads in with this bloody Bruno in the Middle song. People are getting sick of it, and I think that was the one that we heard quite a bit. I just saw a bit of criticism from supporters to supporters. It did create a pretty healthy debate last night, and people saying that there should be a lot of songs brought back and whatever. But again, singing spontaneous. You can't just plan it. It takes people on the terraces, to start these songs off. So what was your take on that?
I'll be honest, Steve. I was hoping you weren't going to ask us this because I don't want to upset.
Did you see that? Did you see it?
I
like
did,
I did?
yeah. I thought it was. And I don't mean to upset anybody here, and I'm trying. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. You've asked my opinion on it, and that's what I come on for, is just to give an honest take on it. And I was quite disappointed in the atmosphere in that 90 minutes during the game. And I understand that you get 30 minutes in and you go a goal down, and then 5 minutes later you're 2-0 down, and it just went flat. The whole thing went flat. But if I'm being honest, I thought the atmosphere was quite tame. There was pockets. You could hear pockets where people are trying to get the songs going. It's difficult when it's a big. I know it's going to sound daft, because you would think there's 33, 34, 35,000 there. The atmosphere should be better than if there's just 2 or 3 or 4,000 there. But not everybody who is there is there. They're not all singers. They're not all chanters or cheerers or whatever. There's lots of there's families there. There's people who that's not why they go to games ultimately. And when it's all spread out, it's very difficult to get that kind of momentum in the singing and in the chanting. So I don't want to. I'm not criticising fans or anything else like that, because I'm one myself and I was there myself. But I didn't think the atmosphere was great in that night. I thought it was great at the start. I thought there was pockets when it was great. I thought it was excellent at the end, like Steve, like what you're saying, when the spontaneous waving of the flags and everything came back. I thought at times it was a little bit flat. I wasn't sure if Newcastle fans had a lot of fans had burnt themselves out on the Saturday night almost. It almost like absolutely given their all on that Saturday. I'm a bit hungover, a bit knackered, a bit tired, a bit lost the voice or whatever. But I didn't think it was great. It's great as what it can be, and is great as what we've seen it previously. And I'm not a fan of some of the songs. I'll be honest. I think the Bruno in the middle does my head in. If I'm being honest, it's not one that I'm a particular fan of. I think I would like to see a bit more variety. I would like to see some of the old songs come back, like what you've talked about there, Steve. But you're never going to get a perfect storm. People are from different generations with different ideas, and different understandings of what they want to be singing about, what they term as an atmosphere. Some just want to go and watch a match. So it's very difficult when everybody's spread out in that 33, 34,000. But it's a really interesting debate, and I was half hoping you weren't going to bring it up, because I didn't want to kind of upset anybody by it. But I was a little bit disappointed, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, David Cook says, I was thinking the same, Ross, lost of voices. And Tom Lynch said, I like Bruno in the middle, but it's in danger of becoming the song you love, but that becomes annoying because it's overplayed. And yeah, I feel that. And yeah, I mean, Ian says we need Tom Dixon to compose some new tunes. It is difficult because, as well, people are spread all over the place, and you don't have a set singing area, etc. Maybe again that's something that can look at moving forward at the club, and like a set singing area, and again maybe they can do that at Wembley finals rather than just having a safe standing area. Just having a having a particular area for people to go and sing, and that would generate a better atmosphere. But after Saturday night, surely Drunk and Disorderly wasn't sung. Yeah, again, a lot of the old ones have died off. I mean, you do get them at away games, Tom, as I know you know. But it was an interesting thread that last, and I have to agree with a lot of the points made in it. Okay, lot too early for team news, etc. But Newcastle, of course, go to Manchester City, Ross, as we've already discussed at the weekend. I mean, talk about out of the frying pan and into the fire. It's a 12:30 kickoff live on BT Sports on Saturday. All 3,000 away tickets have been sold. Nick Pope, Anthony Gordon, Martin Dubravka, of course, all available after missing the Carabao Cup final. There's a fitness doubt over Bruno, which we'll find out more about later in the week. So, thoughts, please, Ross, and the prediction.
Yeah, absolutely right, Steve. What a massive game! What a game to come out of a cup final defeat. To come into to be playing probably, the best team in the country. It's at their place on a 12:30 kickoff as well, just to make it a little bit trickier as well. Really, really tough game, and I'm going to get pelters here because I feel as though I've been quite negative on the show today. But I'd be surprised if we got anything out of it. I just think it's a tough game to come back to. I know City, they're not the force, and they haven't been the force that of recent years, and there is some vulnerabilities there, and hopefully Newcastle can rise to the occasion. And put the disappointment of Sunday behind them. I'd like to see the team really freshened up. I'd like to see 3 or 4 players come in. Pope will come in. We've talked about Gordon, Isak. Maybe there's another 1 or 2. I'd like to see it really freshened up and them to go at it with a bit of vim and vigour, front foot pressing, and then when City do have a ball, be nice and solid and defensively. Resilient like they have shown for large parts of the season. Hit them on the break, counter-attack, and very similar to the game at St James's Park earlier in the season. But it's going to be a tough ask, Steve. Real tough ask.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give my prediction later in the week, but I can't see anything but a defeat, Ross.
I know, and you hate to say it, you hate to think that way, don't you? But sometimes you've just got to be honest, and I think anything that we get out of that game would be a real bonus.
Wow, Lee Kelly, 2-1 win. Isak scores first few minutes before full time. I'd love to get Madison this summer, says Tom. Gordon and Isak to start. We will be back 6 o'clock tomorrow. Geordie's here, Geordie's there. Super Matt and Gibbo is Thursday night, of course, 6 o'clock as well. And the 3 Amigos will be on Friday at 5. Ross, thanks very much for today, mate. Look forward to speaking to you again next week. Take care, pal.
Cheers, Steve. Cheers, everyone.